Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. I'm Henry Higgins, and with lockdowns easing and businesses reopening, Josh and I are super excited about returning to the cinemas. Now, as much as we have enjoyed catching films on TV, such as Zack Snyder's Justice League and Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, to name two, the thrill of sitting in a darkened cinema, savouring the entertainment on a massive screen alongside like-minded people, is one that we have, to be frank, sorely missed. So, with the local cinema hopefully opening soon, but the next town over multiplex opening a couple of weeks ago, cinema movies are definitely a go. So to that end, here are the top 10 movies that Josh and I are looking forward to seeing before the sun sets on 2021. And to avoid actually having to rank them, we are simply going to go through them in a chronological order, based on their current scheduled release dates. Now, it is important that we take into account that a lot of these movies have had their release dates moved multiple times in some cases. So these are the current scheduled release dates, and the list will only include movies that Josh and I can go and see together. It should be noted, as previously mentioned with the release date thing, that the majority of them are actually holdovers from 2020, with the pandemic pushing them to this year instead. Please do stick around after we've done this list though, as I'll be going through a quick rundown of movies that will be released between now and the end of the year that are likely to be rated 15 or over in the UK, which is an R rating or above in the US. Josh won't be able to go and see them, though some of them I don't think he'd be interested in anyway, but they are movies I will be going to see on my own, so stick around for that. So it's a little bonus feature, like a post-credit scene if you will. But for now, let's list some movies. Up first is a movie that I only heard about a week and a half ago. It's called The Tomorrow War, starring Chris Pratt and Yvonne Strahovski from Chuck, is what I know her from more than anything else. It also has J.K. Simmons and Betty Gilpin, in a story that will be directed by Chris McKay, who directed the Lego and the Lego Batman movies. The film itself, based on the trailer, which I saw like I said, about a week and a half ago, it's about time-travelling soldiers jumping 30 years into the past from 2051 to present day to recruit more soldiers before Earth loses the battle for the planet against an alien invasion. Basically, we're getting our arse kicked in the future, so they've came back in time to get more people to join in this battle. There are, it seems, going from the trailer, there voluntary recruitments, but voluntary is a bit of a stretch kind of thing. Chris Pratt is someone with military experience who is part of the future war, or part of the present day people going to find the future war. Yvonne Strahovski is from the future. She leads at least a faction of the army into battle, and Josh and I both agree that it looks like there's a pretty obvious big twist from the trailers, but it could also be an intentional double bluff to try and make us think that and they go in a different direction. Either way, it looks fantastic. The action looks amazing. Chris Pratt is Chris Pratt. He's essentially playing Chris Pratt. All in all, I do believe this movie is going to blow us away with how good it actually is. In the same way that Independence Day kind of just showed up and blew everyone away. We'll find out for ourselves when The Tomorrow War is released on July the 2nd. Second movie is one that's possibly had the most impactful delay out of all the movies in the list, as the MCU returns to the big screen with Black Widow. This was originally set for a May 2020 release, and the world caught fire. The hype had been building for that one, for that release. They released an awesome trailer, setting everything up, and it kind of went quiet, but they've started building things up again. There's been more trailers and more TV spots coming out, so the hype is building again. Scarlett Johansson obviously returns as Natasha Romanoff, the titular Black Widow, while William Hurt returns to the MCU as Secretary Ross. Now, the trailer footage does show a de-aged version of the character using similar technology to what they did for young Hank Pym in the first Iron Man movie, when Ego in the early days, when he was dating Star-Lord's mum in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So it'll be interesting to see if he is de-aged through the whole thing, or if that's something that he's also going to be in his present day version also. Florence Pugh debuts as Yelena Belova, who is a blonde-haired Black Widow. I have a figure of her in the studio room, and Natasha's sister in the Black Widow program. David Harbour from Stranger Things and the Hellboy reboot joins the MCU as Alexei Shostakov, also known as the Red Guardian, essentially, to simplify, a Russian version of Captain America. And Rachel Weisz plays another Black Widow by the name of Melina Vostokov, who is older than Natasha and Yelena, essentially a mother figure. The whole foursome is essentially a family unit, and if the trailer is anything to go by, they are a pretty close-knit family to boot. They've obviously been separated for a long time, possibly due to incidents that will be mentioned, maybe even shown in this film, because there does appear to be flashbacks. Rounding out the cast is Ray Winston, who's playing Dreykov, who was mentioned by Loki in the first Avengers movie. And O.T. Fagbini, who I'm not familiar with, as a character called Rick Mason, who in the comics is sometimes just known as the Agent. The biggest mystery of the casting is Taskmaster. Taskmaster has been over the trailers, toy line, various other things, but no one has been announced as actually being cast in the role. So, due to that, it's likely to be someone who will drop Jaws when the mask is removed, if the mask is removed, but I imagine they will be. They are not saying who the Black Widow villain is. They are not saying who's under the hood. They're not saying who the actor is, never mind the character. So it would stand to reason that it is possibly someone we already know from the MCU, someone we've already met. But it will be interesting to see who is under the mask and whether it's going to be a jaw dropper or a because we have no idea who it is or the significance of it. What we do know is the film is set between Civil War and Infinity War, so the Avengers are split up. Everyone is either in hiding, they're on house arrest like Scott Lang in Ant-Man 2, or in the government's pocket due to the Sokovia Accords. This gives a handy explanation as to why Natasha is going alone. Well, not alone, she's obviously got her Black Widow family, but she's not got her usual backup of the Avengers. Apart from that, not much more is known about the plot. That said, it is pretty clear that it's going to involve the red in Natasha's ledger that she's spoken about a number of times in the movies, that she's trying to redeem herself for. And Loki does mention Dreykov's daughter when they talk about red in the ledger, so it's possible that Natasha killed her, which is why Dreykov is doing this now and why they have Taskmaster going after her. Because Taskmaster seems to be like, he's the assassin's assassin. So the fact that they've got him or her, it could be a female, involved is a big deal. I would also say a good bet is that there's plans to dismantle the Red Room that trains the Black Widows. Again, going from footage seen in the trailer and what's going on. But what I think is going to be interesting on the Taskmaster, they may actually introduce more characters. There's plenty of characters they can introduce, especially if we're going to be in Russia. There's a few Russian characters that can be brought in or even mentioned. Peter Rasputin, Colossus is one. although they may keep him for the X-Men, but who knows at this point. They own the X-Men characters, so Disney can just throw people in. But from the trailer, this is going to be great. It's an MCU movie. The MCU, even the worst MCU movie, objectively and universally considered to be Thor: The Dark World, has a lot of good stuff in it. So I believe this is going to be great. It's long overdue for Black Widow to get a solo movie, and you can catch this on cinemas and on Disney Plus from July 9th. It's not going to be free on Disney Plus, just to clarify. There is going to be a premium above your Disney Plus subscription, which is fair enough. It's a big budget movie. I will be going to see it in the cinema. I don't know which cinema, but from July 9th, you can choose how you want to watch it, in the cinema or at home, and enjoy the return of the MCU to the cinema screen. Third on the agenda is one that had my curiosity when James Gunn was announced as director, but had my attention after the trailer dropped. Reaction to which you can actually see on this channel. So after watching this, go and have a look at that if you haven't already. Possibly the longest cast list of all the movies mentioned today. The tone of the trailer is 100% on brand for James Gunn, and I fully expect King Shark to be the breakout character, with John Cena being the breakout performance. Add in a returning Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, and anyone who spent any time on this channel knows my feelings on Miss Quinn. Jai Courtney bringing back Captain Boomerang, another of my favourites from the previous Suicide Squad movie, and then the addition of so many other characters, and you have a recipe for a fun movie. A fun movie with a capital F in hell. That's Starro. That's how bonkers this movie is going to be. Now the plot seems to be, intentionally I believe, a generic group of misfits sent in to stop a generic bad guy with generic action story. But you know it's going to be so much more than that with the cast, with James Gunn's sensibilities, and the tone of the trailer itself. Gunn himself has said that no one in the cast is safe. He was given the green light by Warner Brothers and DC to kill anyone he wanted in the movie, regardless of how profile they are. So it's possible, though unlikely, that Harley Quinn can die. But who will survive? For me, I think Ratcatcher 2, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, Polka Dot Man Against His Wishes, Rick Flag and King Shark will survive this movie, along with Harley Quinn. She is the main character, which could be subversive by taking her out. They could make a point, but she's kind of the selling point to these films. So it'll be very interesting to see what they do. I am excited to see what toys they bring out, action figures. Been very disappointed with the Birds of Prey figures that came out, or the lack of them. But I know already McFarlane Toys have started work on the Suicide Squad figures. I've seen, I don't know if it was the actual figure or a prototype, but I've seen Harley in the red dress you see her in the trailer. I've seen that figure. There's likely to be more, so I'm very excited about that as well. Now there is a possibility that this will be rated a 15 in the UK. So we'll need to hope that Josh can blag his way in. He's 14 at the moment, he's 14 and a half, so we should be able to do it, and that we can then both sign up for the Suicide Squad on August the 6th. Continuing on, we come to another long delayed movie, and this one was meant to come out in July 2020, so it's not as long of a delay as Black Widow had, but it's over a year at this point. And it's the Ryan Reynolds starring Free Guy. Now, when I saw the trailer for this one, the first time I saw the trailer for this, I lost my shit. It was so funny, it was so on point, the tone was perfect, the concept. If you're not aware, it's a high concept action comedy with Ryan Reynolds playing a character called Guy, who's an NPC in an online open world game called Free City, hence Free Guy. Think Grand Theft Auto Online, but pushed to extreme parody levels. Guy goes through the same preset routine time after time after time, because he's an NPC. So people coming in to do that section of the game will have him do the same thing over and over again. But that goes on until he becomes aware he is in a game and goes off script. Or would that be off code? I'll leave that up to you. The film also stars Jodie Comer, and Jodie Comer is an infatuation of mine. Be Still by Meeting Heart with Jodie Comer. She's absolutely gorgeous, and she is phenomenal in Killing Eve. And if you haven't seen Killing Eve, I recommend you go and give it a watch. It's a fantastic show. She plays a character called Millie, a programmer who inserts the software into the game's code to make Guy self-aware. She also plays Molotov Girl, her character in the game itself. And as it's an online game that is also streamed, the world gets behind Guy after he becomes free. This prompts Antoine, who is played by Taika Waititi. He's the creator of Free City. It prompts him to shut down the game entirely. So the plot essentially then is we enter into a race against time to stop the shutdown, as Guy would cease to exist. And from the trailer, all sorts of crazy hijinks will ensue. The tone of this is fantastic. The action looks phenomenal. I would watch Ryan Reynolds take a shit. I genuinely would. Anytime he's on screen, he is phenomenal. And I, for one, love pretty much everything he's ever done. He's the type of, again, unfairly you may say, but he plays the same type of character a lot, but there's nothing wrong with that. The same tone. Even if you've seen his adverts for Wales and Wrexham, since he took over Wrexham Football Club, the tone is consistent there as well. And Jodie Comer, I would watch in anything. Also, this looks like it's going to be fun. It has the potential to steal 2021. That rhymed, didn't even mean it. And we will find out if it does steal 2021 when it releases on August the 13th. We've reached the halfway point, and we're back with the second of 4 trips into the MCU, which kind of will give you a hint of what 2 of the remaining movies are going to be. And it's the first of 2 that introduces us to a set of new characters. And that would be Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Now, slightly tweaks the origin of the titular hero, because part of the plot, at least from the trailers, sees Wenwu instruct his son, Shang-Chi, to return to his side and take his place within the Ten Rings organisation. Now, the Ten Rings are a terrorist organisation that have roots deep in the MCU. They've been an ever-present in the MCU canon, having featured in all 3 Iron Man movies. They also featured in a cameo, to a degree, in the first Ant-Man movie, and the absolutely fantastic Marvel one-shot All Hail the King, which sees Trevor Slattery broken out of prison by Jackson Norris, who is part of the Ten Rings, so that he can be brought before the real Mandarin and be punished for stealing his name. Going back to Iron Man 3 for a second, the actual bait and switch of the Mandarin in that movie split fandom down the middle. I absolutely loved it in the trailers, and when he was playing the Mandarin, Trevor Slattery, Ben Kingsley, as Trevor Slattery, he was mesmerising. He was perfect as a modern version of the Mandarin, which was the point of that character. And then All Hail the King confirmed that the real Mandarin is out there, which we would have known with the Ten Rings organisation. That wasn't a coincidence. So they knew even back then the real Mandarin was there. So that brought everything full circle. So it makes me wonder if Trevor will actually make a brief appearance in this movie or be referenced at all. Apart from the brief synopsis though, not much is known of the overarching plot, though there are scenes that seem to be set in Madripoor, which featured heavily in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where a fighting tournament is taking place by all accounts, by footage and various things you can put together in the trailer. It has been said that this is going to be MCU's loose version of Enter the Dragon. So it could be a good place to introduce, or cameo at least, known close quarter fighters in the Marvel Comics. Iron Fist is a great shout. Daredevil, although we'll talk about him a little later. Elektra, Wolverine, a bit of a stretch, but they do have the rights to the character again. And from the trailer, which is another one you can check the reaction on the channel, looks unlike anything yet seen in the MCU. Historical battles, going back centuries. The Mandarin seems to have been around for a very long time. Martial arts fights, stunning cinematography and choreography that we've seen in the trailer, and the art design overall, and the potential to portray Asian comic book characters correctly rather than the usual rushed, offensive stereotypes of old. I mean, Shang-Chi's father in the original comics was Fu Manchu, and Fu Manchu was the inspiration originally for the Mandarin in the comics as well. It's complicated. Fu Manchu goes back to like the late 19th century. Fu Manchu is the yellow. There was a time when there was the yellow peril. It was a gross time, to be honest. I'm not going to spend much time talking about it here. This isn't the place, and I'm not the person to be doing so. However, the Mandarin himself was such a gross stereotype that this itself, the way they have him, at least in the trailer, in the movies, and how it's been described by people who have seen footage of the movie, been on set, it is going to be pretty much an all-Asian cast for the most part in the principal roles. There are going to be some non-Asian characters, which is fine, especially if there's a fighting tournament with people coming from all over the world. But the principal characters are all Asian, and that's phenomenal. Simu Liu, Tony Leung, and Awkwafina are going to be amazing in their roles as Shang-Chi, Wenwu, the Mandarin, and Katie respectively. While similar to Black Widow with Taskmaster, there's also a character in the movie called Death Dealer, who we've seen bits here and there. And currently no one is listed in the cast as playing them. So again, we don't know if it's male or female either. So it could be a similar situation to when Taskmaster unmasks, and we are shocked to see who is behind it. I guess we'll find out. But I am excited to see what Marvel can do with this, with the characters, and it releases on September the 3rd, so we don't have too long to wait before Shang-Chi and the real Mandarin show on our screens. Moving on, we have another sequel, and a movie that may or may not be linked in some capacity with the MCU. The Sony-Marvel sharing of Spider-Man creates a lot of complications. And especially with the multiverse being outright dangled in our faces after the first episode of Loki on Wednesday just gone, the potential for this to be in the same overall sphere as the MCU, where events happened in the same world, the potential is there. Now, Venom was one of my favourite movies of 2018. Upgrade was the favourite movie of that year, and it was also the movie of the decade in our series looking at the best films of the 2010s, which you can also go back and watch on the channel. And Venom really surprised me with how it went and how well it worked without the standard origin of a black-suited Spider-Man to kick things off and to give Venom the symbiote. Because remember, the symbiote is just like a black goo, really. So the Venom appearance was a grotesque abomination of Spider-Man, a black Spider-Man. So they did that, and they did it well without a black-suited Spider-Man to kick things off with. Tom Hardy was excellent as both Eddie Brock and the voice of the symbiote. Michelle Williams as Anne Wang and Lady Venom for a short period was great. Reed Scott as Dan, Anne Wang's new boyfriend, was an expertly crafted cliche dodge, and the mid-credits reveal of Woody Harrelson as Clayus Cassidy just set us off to the races, knowing where the sequel was going to go once it was greenlit, which didn't take too long. Venom was a box office juggernaut. Venom was a lot of fun, and from the trailer, for Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Yeah, another one you can watch on the channel. We have Eddie and Venom getting along to a degree. Eddie is back to being a respectable journalist, and Venom has been protecting the city for about a year. And in the year that's passed, Cletus has been speaking with Eddie Brock. Eddie Brock is the only person he will allow to interview him. So between the period of the first movie and now, Eddie Brock has been getting exclusive interviews with Cletus Cassidy, who is now due to be executed for his crimes. Somehow, in an as yet unrevealed sequence of events, the Carnage symbiote bonds with Cletus and he escapes prison to go on a killing spree. The scene in the trailer where he's getting the lethal injection and the symbiote blocks it, that was beautifully done. It looks painful being Carnage, or at least becoming Carnage the first time. And what's interesting with the Venom symbiote and the Carnage symbiote, at least in the comics, whether they go down this route or not, is that the Carnage symbiote bonds more closely with Cletus due to his psychotic tendencies. He has more control, Cletus does. And in the comics they reference that because for Venom and Eddie Brock, it's the symbiote and Eddie Brock that make Venom. Venom is not the symbiote. Venom is the host and the symbiote together, which is why multiple people have been Venom. But he always spoke in the double person, so it was always we. We are Venom, we hate Parker, we hate this, we do that. And in the comics, Carnage was I am Carnage, and it was quite a shock because it showed that they are so closely linked. They are not a symbiotic relationship, they are one being. So how they do that in the movie is going to be very interesting. With Cletus Cassidy being such a dangerous human, just as a normal human, him powered up as Carnage is a terrifying thought, as it was in the comics. The look of Carnage in the trailer and on stills seems to be absolutely spot on, and I hope this does as well as the first Venom film. And I hope it leads to an actual crossover with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, who is, let's not forget, a Sony property, perhaps leading to a black suit version of Spider-Man in an inverse of the origin story where the symbiote leaves Eddie to go to Peter Parker. But that's down the line. Venom, Let There Be Carnage is out on September the 24th, and that is another one to check off. But that's down the line. Before that, we've got Venom, Let There Be Carnage. It is out on September the 24th, and I, for one, cannot wait. Up next, we've now hit November, so going by the chronology there's nothing in October that me and Josh are going to be going insane. We've moved to November, and we're back in the MCU proper, and another movie whose trailer we reacted to on the channel, which is Eternals. From the footage in the trailer and what's known of the Eternals, this will be a prequel and a sequel to the Infinity Saga, as it is partly set centuries in the past, with the Hanging Garden of Babylon featuring quite heavily in one scene in the trailer. And in the stinger for the trailer, in the end, they do mention that Iron Man and Captain America are no longer with us, which sets that part after Infinity War. So it leaves a lot of questions to be answered. Mainly with why the Eternals didn't interfere in previous MCU events, such as Loki's invasion of New York with Chitauri, Ultron in Sokovia, Thanos in Wakanda, just to name three. I'm sure there will be a valid explanation in the movie, but those were three huge events that they didn't feel warranted in getting involved in. Or it could be that they were unaware that they were Eternals, so wouldn't know that they could interfere or intervene. I'm sure we'll find out. But it does lead us to the bigger question of what is the scale of the threat in this movie if those previously mentioned events, including the snapping of half the universe, weren't sufficient to have the Eternals interfere. Is it the Celestials? who created the Eternals, coming to deem Earth unworthy? Is it another god-level being such as Galactus? There is one shot in the trailer that seems to indicate some kind of otherworldly antagonist in the clouds. But because of the nature of Marvel, the comics, and who they can pull from, especially now that they do have all of the Fox characters back as well, the potential antagonists, there's dozens that could fit the bill. Although we need to take into account who we know is tied up with the Loki series, Ant-Man Quantumania, which is coming out I believe in 2022, maybe 2023, has Kang the Conqueror, so I don't think he'll be introduced here. He may be dropped hints of in Loki, so the odds are it is the Celestials, but it could be the Deviants. I guess we'll find out when we see the movie. That said, moving on to the cast itself, Eternals boasts an amazing roster of talent. Gemma Chan, who has previously appeared in the MCU in Captain Marvel, she was a Kree. Richard Madden from Game of Thrones, which now means Mark Hamill has two sons in the MCU after Sebastian Stan. Now, I know you're looking at me confused, but seriously, go and look at them and tell me that you wouldn't buy them as Luke Skywalker's sons in a Star Wars spin-off. Both of them look ridiculously like a young Mark Hamill. But again, I'm digressing. Kumail Nanjiani is in the movie, Brian Tyree Henry, Salma Hayek, Angelina Jolie, who looks absolutely amazing as Athena, and Kit Harington as Dane Whitman, the Black Knight, is a human who wields the Ebony Blade, which itself has a very long and complicated history, which I am not going to get into right now. Also means the Stark brothers are back together for the first time since the first season of Game of Thrones. I believe as well, maybe even the first episode of Game of Thrones. So that's quite interesting. But how will the re-emergence of these superpower protectors affect the current power balance in the MCU? We don't know, but we will find out on November the 5th, when in the UK there will be literally fireworks. And I apologise, that pun was abysmal. Stepping outside the Marvel bubble for a split second at least, up next we have a movie that I have been so hyped for since the first teaser dropped. And the first teaser was simply a little hint of the music and a shot of Ecto 1 booting up, and I lost my shit watching that. Like, seriously, not literally, because that would have been a different kettle of fish altogether, but I saw that and I got so excited. Ghostbusters Afterlife was originally supposed to hit in July 2020, similar to Free Guy. The pandemic obviously delayed that, which has given time for the hype to simmer before it started building back up again recently. It moves on from the female-led reboot, which itself ignored the events of the first two movies. Essentially, it's an alternate timeline story. This one is a direct follow-up to, in my opinion, the underappreciated Ghostbusters 2. With the actions of the first two movies being known to the general public, though with no ghosts since 1989, so you're talking over, well, by the time this comes out, 30 years. Some people see the Ghostbusters as urban legends rather than what happened being factual events. But when spooky going on take place, which are reminiscent of the Manhattan Cross-Rip of 1984, or the first Ghostbusters film, a new threat emerges and things point again to Ivo Shander being involved. Now this isn't a surprise, as he was the one who designed the building for the first Ghostbusters movie. The structure and the layout and the girders and materials used, it was all designed so that it could be used to bring forth Gozer the Gazarian and destroy the world. He failed. He was also involved in the tunnels that allowed the mood slime to affect the city in the second movie. So to have him involved here isn't a surprise. In the trailer, they even show Shandor Mining. I believe it's called Shandor Mining, but it's definitely a mine owned by the Shandor family. And in the trailer, there's like a mine shaft, and then there's green fluorescence coming out, which only means ghosts. That's what it means. It means ghosts. So that's the basic premise of what's going on. However, with Egon Spengler dead due to the genuinely sad passing of Harold Ramis and the other Ghostbusters retired, it is up to Egon's granddaughter Phoebe, played by McKenna Grace, who was in Captain Marvel, and his grandson Trevor, played by Finn Wolfhard, who actually dressed up as a Ghostbuster in Stranger Things. So it's interesting how things can come full circle. It's up to the kids to save their town in a supernatural showdown. Carrie Coon stars as their mother, and Paul Rudd as a teacher who has a fascination with the Ghostbusters. Conventional logic would dictate that Paul Rudd becomes a romantic interest for Carrie Coon. Come back to that. Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Annie Hudson's going to be even, and Annie Potts all return from the first two movies, as well as Peter Venkman, Ray Stantz, Winston Zeddemore, Dana Barrett, and Janine Milnitz, respectively. That's phenomenal that they managed to get so many of the original cast back. It promises to be a nostalgia fest when it releases on November the 11th, and will hopefully set up a new run of Ghostbuster movies. But they wouldn't make Paul Rudd a villain, would they? Would they? We're now venturing into the home stretch with only two movies left, and two movies we know a surprisingly little about. And first up is Spider-Man No Way Home, and I recommend you get comfortable because this is a long one. It's obviously set after the events of Far From Home, but due to pandemic delays and Phase 4 of the MCU being shifted around quite a bit, it's unknown how long after the outing of Peter Parker as Spider-Man this actually takes place. We do know that both WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier took place after Endgame, but before the events of Far From Home. So it will be interesting to see what, if any, effect they have on the overall story going forward with Phase 4 and this movie. Now, Loki is not set. It is, but it isn't. Time travel is awkward. Never try to unravel time travel. You'll just end up with your head in knots. But Loki is in its own little timeline bubble, so that will likely have no real overall effect on the plot, other than maybe being the catalyst for the multiverse existing again. What has been revealed about the movie, though, does give us more questions than answers. Tom Holland, of course, is back as Spider-Man, Peter Parker. Zendaya is back as MJ, and Jacob Batalon returns as Ned Leeds. And I remain convinced that that character was not named Ned Leeds just for the hell of it. There's more going on there. And if you know Ned Leeds from the comics, you know where it could be going. Marisa Tomei returns as Aunt May as well, and JB Smoove as Mr. Dell, Peter's teacher who fears witches. And wondering, and it's a theory now, that Far From Home, he mentions that he blames witches for what's happening with what essentially was Mysterio's illusions in the end. Did he blame witches due to him having knowledge of what happened in WandaVision? That could be an interesting full circle. Benedict Cumberbatch is also on board as Doctor Strange. He's taking on the mentor role left vacant by Tony Stark, having passed. Now it's interesting as it directly ties No Way Home to both WandaVision and the Multiverse of Madness. With the first episode of Loki using both Multiverse and Madness to describe the original variant timelines and what could happen if a breach was allowed to go on for too long and break the timeline again. It is possible that Spider-Man No Way Home could get quite freaky before the credits roll. Strengthening the whole multiverse concept, though, is the confirmed casting of Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus and Jamie Foxx as Electro. and not as MCU takes of the character either. These have been confirmed as being the versions from Spider-Man 2 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 respectively. With Molina specifically stating that his character picks up from where he died at the end of Spider-Man 2. Electro hasn't been given as much information yet, but I'm sure that will come. There's also talk that Charlie Cox is going to resume his role from Daredevil, the Defenders Collective, street-level Avengers, for lack of a better way of putting it, that was on Netflix for a few years. Rumour is he may not be Daredevil, but he could be Matt Murdock. And it's very possible that he represents Peter Parker in his trial based on his outing at the end of Far From Home at the hands of Mysterio. There's been certain rumours that he has already filmed his scenes. There has been denials from Charlie Cox himself, but of course, you can take anything like that with a pinch of salt. There's been multiple people who have said, I've not been asked and I can't talk about it, to have then been revealed as being the person to take on that role. So again, that could be up in the air. I would absolutely love it. As for how Dr. Octopus and Electro end up in our timeline, a theory I'm going with is that the collapse of the nuclear sun created by Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man 2 when it was being taken down into the Hudson River created a nexus point when it collapsed, where Doc Ock passed into our timeline. Similarly, when Electro was overloaded and exploded the final act in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I don't think he was destroyed. Simply because energy cannot be destroyed, it can only be transformed, channeled, or dissipated. It can change its form, like kinetic energy can become thermal energy and various things like that, but it cannot be destroyed, it can only be transformed or dissipated. So I think that when he exploded, there was so much energy that another nexus point was created, and it allowed Electro to pass into our timeline also. That said, I'm sure they'll come up with a great explanation as well. But with these theories, it can also explain why Electro is no longer going to be blue, simply because he dissipated and reconstituted himself, so he has better control of his molecules, things like that. So he can just be Jamie Foxx. I don't think he's going to wear the classic comic mask with the lightning and such like, but it'll be interesting to see that as well. Of course, there's also, with those two villains coming to the MCU / Sony take on Spider-Man, rumours are rampant on who else is likely to show up. We've had an announcement that there's going to be a Kraven the Hunter movie. We also have Venom and Carnage kicking about in the Sony side of things. Morbius is on his way. And the Morbius trailer muddled things up a bit more as well, because obviously that featured Spider-Man on the wall with Murderer on it, but that was Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. So that was intentionally to make us think of the MCU Spider-Man with the Murderer, but then was Peter Parker in the Raimi movies considered the Murderer because of them, Eddie Brock dying, Otto Octavius dying, although he obviously didn't, going by this now, various things like that. And then with Michael Keaton appearing at the end of the Morbius trailer, ostensibly as Vulture from Spider-Man Homecoming, but not named as such, but definitely dressed as such. We also have Scorpion, who was in prison as well. So there are rumours that there's going to be a Sinister Six team of villains, and it's Norman Osborn, played by Willem Dafoe, that's getting them together, and he's pulling from the multiverse. These are just rumours, obviously. There's no verification, no validation to these rumours as of yet. They are just rumours and possible fan casting. But the hype train is overdrive at the moment for two people, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, with them returning as their respective versions of the Wallcrawler. to add to that, they're obviously doing a multiverse thing, and if villains from the Raimiverse and the Mark Webb The Amazing Spider-Man verse can come through, then the heroes can come through as well. So it's not a theory without merit. They're obviously going for a multiverse, which could be into a live-action Spider-Verse, so there's plenty going on there as well. And a behind-the-scenes shot, which I'm going to put on the screen now, a behind-the-scenes shot of Tom Holland in costume to promote the wearing of masks during the pandemic, shows a character off to the right of the image, and that character is wearing the same kind of sleeve as Andrew Garfield did in his movies. Now that's quite a reach, but it also fits. Add in that William Spencer, who was Garfield's stunt double on the Amazing Spider-Man movies, he posted then deleted a picture of himself on the set of No Way Home alongside Greg Townley, who is the stunt double for Tom Holland. Now, this doesn't mean Spencer was filming and doubling for Garfield. Stuntmen and women appear in countless movies without their main actor being in the film. And stuntmen and stuntwomen obviously are a community, so maybe he was just around and popped in. But with this being a comic book movie, we are going to put a number of things together and run with it. The potential for this movie is off the charts. The plot is under wraps and no trailers have dropped. The one is expected relatively soon. I do expect the movie to have some kind of multiversal madness before the multiverse of madness blows things wide open. I just hope that if the final movie doesn't have other Spider-Men in it, the usual suspects don't turn on Marvel and the fandom and flood the world with bile. We've seen it happen many times, and it's okay to have fan theories. It's okay to pin your hopes on that theory panning out. I'm doing that with a number of things at the moment. But if a creator of anything, this goes for anything, this doesn't go just for this movie, this goes for anything with a potential theory that you can have and build on. If a creator doesn't give you something they never said they would give you, the blame isn't on them. No one at Marvel has said, to put it for this movie, no one at Marvel, no one at Sony has said that other Spider-Men will appear in this movie. No one. Obviously when the trailer drops, if that gives more of a hint that they are, that's a different story. But at the moment, based on what we know, there has been no hints even, or confirmations that other Spider-Men will appear in this movie. So if they don't, that's okay. There are other movies that can happen in, especially when the multiverse is cracked open. So please remember that when Spider-Man No Way Home hits cinemas on December the 17th. And lastly, we have a movie where I literally know nothing about. Don't even know the title, we're just going to call it The Matrix 4. I know nothing about it. I don't think anyone really does know anything about it other than the cast, and that it follows on from the previous trilogy. The Wachowski sisters did a great job on the first film, while Reloaded and Revelations were good. They had some amazing moments both in movies, but they were flawed in a few places. With this one, the fourth one, Lana Wachowski is going alone as her sister Lily sits the fourth movie out. I don't know why that's happening. I don't know if there's a reason for it. Obviously there is a reason for it, but I don't know what the reason is. I don't know if there's conflicts with scheduling and various things, but Lana has written, will produce and direct this movie on her own. Nothing has been revealed, as I said, as it relates to the plot, or whether it will even be called The Matrix 4. Whether it will have a subheading like the sequels, Matrix Reloaded, The Matrix Revelations, or simply be called Matrix, as a leak, which was on the official distributor Twitter page. A leak hinted at on January 16th, 2021, just had the word Matrix. So people put two and two together and convinced themselves that's going to be the name of the movie. Similar to The Thing prequel that came out, was just called The Thing, which is actually an underrated movie. Go and give it a watch. It's a fantastic film to watch back to back with John Carpenter's The Thing, because the last scene of prequel is the first scene of Carpenter's movie. So that's an interesting little side note for you. Halloween 2018, great movie. Obviously just went with Halloween rather than any other sequel numbers or subtitles. The next Scream movie, Scream 5, is just going to be called Scream. So there's a little trend going on there. But as I say, no one knows what it's going to be called. All we do know is that Keanu Reeves is back as Neo, Carrie-Anne Moss, Jada Pinkett Smith, Lambert Wilson and Daniel Bernhardt all return as Trinity, Niobe, the Merovingian and Agent Johnson respectively. But you will notice there's no Morpheus or Agent Smith in the cast list currently. That's an interesting development. Other actors in the cast, but with undisclosed roles, include Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who was Black Manta in Aquaman, Neil Patrick Harris, Jessica Henwick, Jonathan Groff, Toby Onwumere, Max Remelt, Erendira Ibarra, Priyanka Chopra, Andrew Caldwell, Brian J. Smith, Ellen Holman, and excitingly for me, because I've had a crush on her for the longest time as well, Wednesday Addams herself, Christina Ricci. Who they are in the movie? No idea. As this is a computer simulation, we believe, is it in the real world? I doubt it, you never know. But they could be programs for existing characters cast in different roles, or with different people cast to play them. So that could be interesting. There's a few people there. Neil Patrick Harris, Christina Ricci, standing out there. They're not people you cast in throwaway roles. So while I have no idea what the movie is about, I loved the first movie. I enjoyed the second and third movie. And just to get back into this world, this was supposed to be released in May alongside John Wick 4. They were actually going to be released on the same day. That's not happening now, obviously. So I'm very excited for this. Keanu Reeves has had such a renaissance since the first John Wick movie, and I'm here for it. The movie releases on December 22nd, so it's essentially this year's Christmas movie. So there is plenty of time for a trailer and TV spots before then to fill us in. And there you have it. The 10 movies Josh and I are most excited about seeing at the cinema together. Now, as mentioned, there are also a few more that I am keen on seeing that Josh will likely be age restricted from. And these are, I'm going to read them here, Old, which is out on the 23rd of July. That is M. Night Shyamalan's new one. I'm really intrigued by the trailer. Candyman, sequel to, I believe it's a sequel just to the original Candyman. I think they're doing what they did with the Halloween 2018 is there was Halloween 1 and that was it, and then there was this movie. So I think Candyman is going to ignore the sequels to Candyman. It was Candyman, now there's this. Following on from that, there's Halloween Kills, which should have been out last year. It's now this year. Direct follow-up to Halloween 2018. Taking cues from Halloween 1 and 2, the original, where it picks off immediately from where the previous film ended. That's on the 15th of October. I'm toying with keeping it, if it's still going to be in the cinema at Halloween, to go and see it on Halloween. But I'll probably just go and see it. I'll watch the previous film before we go. Top Gun Maverick is out on the 19th of November, which I'm keen on. That has also been delayed. Second to last movie on this little subsection, Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City. Rebooting the movie series. Resident Evil is quite complicated at the moment because we had the Mila Jovovich movies with Paul Anderson, and I enjoyed them. I thought they were great for what they were. We now have Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, which is a live action movie which will stay much more faithful to the games. It's essentially adapting Resident Evil 1 and 2. So it has Chris, Claire, Jill, Leon in it, among other characters obviously. There's also a animated TV series which follows on from the current canon of Resident Evil, again with Leon and Claire. And there's just been announced a live action Resident Evil TV show for streaming as well, which is interesting. From what I understand, it's set 30, from what I've read anyway, it's set 30 years after the canon events of the game series, and it stars Lance Reddick as Albert Wesker. Now, as you can imagine, certain sections online have had a field day throwing hissy fits and toys out of the pram because a black man has been cast as a character who is predominantly white. But as I have said to multiple people, white isn't a defining characteristic or a character trait for Albert Wesker. There are certain characters where their ethnicity and their race is important. Shaft, Luke Cage, Candyman, who I mentioned earlier. The race, being black man, is intrinsically linked to their stories. Same with Asian characters, same with certain white characters. Their ethnicity, like a great example of a white character is Danny Rand in Iron Fist, who I mentioned could be in Shang-Chi. Him being white and being given the power of the Iron Fist is a big deal, and it is a major part of the story and his character. Whereas someone like Kingpin in the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, Michael Clark Duncan physically was perfect for that character. He had the size and the aura and the voice to perfectly play a character like Kingpin. Vincent D'Onofrio did the exact same thing in the Daredevil TV series. A black guy and a white guy both played the character and both played the character perfectly. Kingpin being white is not a characteristic of his character. And with Albert Wesker being recast, especially in a film series or a video game series where constant mutation and altering appearance and then various other things happen, who's to say that Albert Wesker himself, and I'm just spitballing here, I'm just throwing this out, intentionally changed to a black man in the character in the story to hide himself because of all the things he's done. There could be 100 different reasons for it, but either way, Lance Reddick is a fantastic actor, and that's going to be excellent. But that's a TV show, and I've rambled on quite a bit there. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City is out on the 24th of November 2021. And rounding out this section, rounding out the list, is West Side Story. Steven Spielberg is directing this. West Side Story is my favourite musical of all time. I loved the movie. I've been to see the stage show a couple of times. But I absolutely adore the music in the movie. I adore everything about it. I adore the loaded colours, the obvious backdrops and backlot shooting. So I'm very excited to see what Steven Spielberg can do with it. It's still set in the 50s. It's going to keep the same story. From what I read, it will keep the songs, may do them in a more contemporary fashion perhaps. West Side Story rounds out the list of movies I will be going to see on my own. Now let us know in the comments below what movies you're excited about seeing in the cinemas, especially if they haven't been listed here, and whether you agree with any of our selections. I do thank you for spending time with us on this channel, watching this video. Please hit the like button, the share button, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell so you don't miss any videos when we upload them. We'll see you on the next one, so please stay safe, wear a mask, look after yourself, and look after each other. Goodbye.